Hey guys, my name is Modi and welcome back to Modi Speaks. I recently came across a video of a black American man who looks to be in his 30s explaining why he would rather trust a Muslim than to trust a Christian of any race. Now, his reasoning boiled down to this idea that white people enslaved his ancestors. They brought Christianity, therefore Christianity is evil and white people are evil too. Now, the Arabs, he claimed, never did anything wrong to his ancestors, to his people, that is black people. So Islam is trustworthy. Muslims he would trust, but Christians never. Now, I sat here rather, watching that video and being honestly dumbfounded. I was not speechless because I thought that this mature man was uniquely foolish. He's not, or not exactly, but I was short of words because this exact line of thinking circulates wildly in certain corners of black American discourse. He is not the first black person I have seen echoing these same sentiments, okay? Many of these black folks reject Christianity because white people enslaved their ancestors or because white people brought the faith. And then they run straight into Islam as if the Arabs somehow have cleaner hands. They forget, or more accurately, they never learned that the Arabs inflicted far more greater injustice on their ancestors than white people ever did. Watching a grown man speak with such confidence while being so wrong about the history made me pause, because if somebody his age can be this uninformed, how many younger black Americans are walking around with the same incomplete story? Well, today, I want us to have this real discussion about this particular issue. I want us to talk about the unsensitized black people who think exactly like this man. It is high time we start having these open conversations and actually start enlightening people so they stop spreading this kind of ignorance. We cannot keep ignoring videos like this and hoping that this type of nonsense just fades away. So stay with me, guys, as I drag these guys out of the pit of ignorance. Watch the clip.
I would trust a Muslim with my life before any Christian. Any Christian of any race. I would trust a Muslim with my life before any Christian of any race. And you want to know why? Muslims didn't put my ancestors in chains and drag them from Africa across the Atlantic and brought us to the Americas to be enslaved and raped and eaten and had our children use as alligator bait.
Yeah, you picked the wrong hill to die on, bro. Because not only did Arabs enslave Africans, it's actually the longest standing slave trade. In fact, it was never abolished. The Arab-Muslim slave trade, also known as the Trans-Saharan slave trade, is recognized as the longest in history, spanning over 1,300 years. It forcibly removed millions of Africans from their homeland. Oh, and it gets way worse. You see, while European merchants primarily sought, strong young men to work their fields, the Arabs had a different idea in mind. For the Muslim merchants, there was a heavy focus on concubinage and sex slaves. The demand for females was so high that merchants would double their price, and the Muslims would impregnate their female slaves to try and stop reproduction between the Africans. You may be wondering what they did with the men in all this time. They castrated them, a procedure that resulted in the death of many during the process. Can you imagine being a man, having to watch your women be ripped out of your homes, and then having to watch them be sex slaves, and then you're castrated on top of that? It's no wonder that a lot of the slaves, the male slaves, committed suicide. Is beyond emasculating. It is beyond humiliating. And when we go to the Quran, we see that Muhammad was not only a slave owner and slave trader, but that he would buy other slaves for 2 black slaves. So black slaves were worth half as much. And the Quran teaches that those who go to heaven have bright white faces, while those who go to hell have black faces. To understand, a lot of the English translations are watered down. The original Arabic is brutal. Slavery still exists today in many Arab nations. I dare you to go to Libya as a black man and see what they'll do with you. In Palestine, black people are called al-Bid, which means slave. They're literally in a neighborhood called Al-Bid. the slave. The Hadiths even praise Muhammad for his whiteness.
A big shout out to this woman for taking the words right out of my mouth, guys. And to add to that, Africans captured, enslaved, and sold their fellow Africans into both the Atlantic and the Arab slave trades. Would that reality ever make individuals like this man say that they can no longer trust their fellow black people? Would it ever lead them to demand reparations from African nations? Would it cause them to scrutinize or direct the same level of anger towards Africans? I am not suggesting they should do any of these things to Africans, okay? I am simply asking whether this fact will ever help them understand that slavery was never just a white thing. Slavery touched virtually every race and culture on planet Earth. Be it Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Vietnamese, Africans, Europeans, every major group has both practiced slavery and been subjected to it at different points in history. For most of human existence, it was treated as a normal institution. So when the conversation turns specifically to black people and the direction of their anger, is it justified to focus almost exclusively on white people, to the point of declaring that one would rather trust a Muslim than a Christian, simply because white people brought Christianity and white people enslaved their ancestors? These guys are really not aware that the trans-Saharan or Arab slave trade lasted roughly 1,300 years, from the 7th century into the early 20th century. That is nearly 4 times longer than the transatlantic slave trade, which only lasted for only 350 years. The Arab slave trade was more brutal and more deadly to us Africans than any slave trade you can ever mention, okay? The Arabs enslaved about 18 million individuals. 18 million. These type of black people peddling this kind of narrative have never wondered how out of 18 million enslaved people, the demographic footprint of these millions of enslaved Africans is extremely small, almost unnoticeable in current society. I'm talking about the Africans that were enslaved by the Arabs, whereas out of only 12 million Africans that were enslaved by white people during the transatlantic slave trade, over 10 million of them survived and thrived, with their descendants alive and inhabiting these Western nations, as we can see today. For the Arabs, male slaves who were not used for labor or military cannon fodder were frequently castrated to serve as eunuchs in households and the courts, okay? The castration procedure, performed under primitive conditions, carried extremely high mortality rates. Historical accounts speak of rates of 60 to 70, even 90% mortality in these castration centers. And those African men who survived the castration could not reproduce. They could not father children to further their generations. Their bloodlines ended right there with them. When you castrate a man, you destroy even his future generation that could have come from him. That is the deliberate erasure of a people's community. So for black people today to look at that history and still treat Arabs as natural brothers while treating white people as permanent enemies, it does not make sense to me. Honestly, it doesn't. And I'm not saying that because I want Africans and Arabs to be at loggerheads or to be enemies. No, I would prefer that we all live in peace with everybody, right? But saying that you would trust an Arab or a Muslim first before trusting a Christian on the basis of slavery is absolutely... The hatred directed at white people over slavery is especially hard to justify when you look at the timeline, okay? The transatlantic slave trade and the system of slavery that followed ended generations ago, okay? No one alive today in America or in England was enslaved by white people. Many white people actually died fighting to end that system. Soldiers, white soldiers, gave their lives so that black people could be free. Whereas the Arab slave trade, by contrast, like I said, ran for 1,300 years. It was never cleanly abolished on its own. In fact, when it finally faced serious pressure to be abolished and ended, much of that pressure came from European powers, of course. But even after its reluctant collapse, remnants of it still continued. Let's take a look at today's modern Arab world. Try researching the kafala system, okay, that is used in many Gulf countries when you have the time. Just try researching kafala system. You will see how African women especially are brought in as domestic workers and often end up in conditions that amount to modern-day slavery. Their Arab employers confiscate their passports, their wages are withheld, they face series of physical and sexual abuse, their lives and dignity crushed. Many of them have died. Behind closed doors, the treatment they are subjected to are extremely brutal. In places like Libya today, open slave markets dealing in black Africans have been documented in recent years. You can go to Libya and you can buy a black person in a slave market even in 2026. Isn't that something to be worried about? In Palestine, there are neighborhoods and references still tied to the word albid or similar terms that literally mean the slaves. Neighborhoods named albeit neighborhood, meaning slave neighborhood, simply because Afro-Palestinians live in those neighborhoods. You can Google this. I'm telling you, as of 2026. Not to mention that asylum seekers from Africa in many Arab countries receive little to no recognition by these Arabian governments. They receive no protection whatsoever because they are African. These things are not ancient stories from far back. They are happening right now. Yet the same black voices who cannot stop talking about white slavery rarely mention any of these incidents. As long as a white person is not involved in doing this type of nonsense, the outrage stays quiet. Now, I'm not saying that black people or anybody for that matter shouldn't be annoyed about slavery, okay? But if you are going to be angry about slavery, be angry about all of slavery. Africans sold other Africans into both the Atlantic and the sub-Saharan slave trade. Why is there almost no sustained demand for accountability or reparations from those African societies? Why does the focus stay locked almost exclusively on white people, while Arabs and the African sellers themselves get a free pass? It is time we call this out clearly. People need to know the full history so they can stop broadcasting this half story or their ignorance as if it is deep insight. Focus on the things that actually matter for progress today instead of recycling a selective grievance that leaves out the larger, longer, and in many ways more devastating chapter of African enslavement. You should trust people because they are individuals who have earned your trust and who are worth trusting, not because they are Muslims who didn't enslave your people. Because hey, Muslims actually did enslave your people, even far more brutally than the white people you hate so much. But as always, guys, these are my thoughts and my opinions. Please feel free to share yours in the comment section below, but do so respectfully. Also, if you're not subscribed to this channel, honestly, I don't know what you're waiting for. Subscribe to the channel. Like and share this video to keep people informed, and consider joining my membership or buying me a coffee if you can, as a way of supporting the channel. Thank you for watching this video, and I hope to catch you on the next one. For now, peace.